While the world wished for peace on Christmas night, here,
Get out of here! This place isn't for people like you! Go out! Go out!
It didn't start with a slap. It started with a broken promise. The bride's name was Amina. She was a gentle Nigerian girl, born and raised in a rural village in the north, a place where red dust clung stubbornly to bare feet, where old zinc-roofed houses stood shoulder to shoulder, as if sharing the same quiet poverty. There, people believed tradition was stronger than promises, and family honor weighed heavier than a young woman's heart. Amina grew up learning how to endure. She learned to lower her head when elders spoke, to stay silent once a decision had been made, and to smile even when something inside her was breaking. From a young age, she was taught that a good daughter is an obedient one, and that happiness is something you learn to accept, not something you get to choose. The man standing beside her at the wedding was not the one she had dreamed of. He was wealthy, well-known in the city, accustomed to all-night parties, luxury cars, and dazzling lights. There was no tenderness in his eyes, only ownership. The way he held Amina's hand felt more like a completed transaction than a promise meant to last a lifetime. The wedding hall was beautifully decorated. White flowers covered the aisle. Soft music filled the air. People laughed, raised their glasses, and offered their blessings. Only Amina stood there in silence, like a statue. She did not cry. Not because she was happy, but because her tears had already run dry the night before. The night before the wedding, the small house did not sleep. Amina knelt on the cold floor, her trembling hands clutching her mother's clothes. She cried without making a sound, as if even the darkness might hear her despair. Her words came out broken and weak, yet painfully sincere. She had loved before. She once believed that if two people tried hard enough, even poverty could be overcome. But the man she loved had left the village years ago, carrying a promise to return when he could finally hold his head high. That promise had now become something no one in the house wanted to mention. Amina looked up at her mother, the woman who had raised her alone, her face deeply lined with years of struggle and worry. In her eyes there was no cruelty, only fear. Fear of poverty. Fear of an uncertain future. Fear that her daughter would repeat the same difficult life she herself had lived. Amina whispered, like a final prayer to the only person who could still save her from this marriage, "I don't love him." "Please, Mom." Her mother remained silent for a long time, then she turned away. Her voice was dry, firm, and final, as if she had been saying it to herself for many years. Love doesn't feed you. Money does. Many years earlier, Amina had already been promised to someone. His name was Kola. Kola was born in the same rural village as Amina, where winding red dirt roads cut through dry fields under scorching winds. They grew up together like two inseparable shadows. Their childhood held no expensive toys, only quiet afternoons sharing a piece of dry bread, breaking it in half, eating slowly, trying to make the feeling of fullness last just a little longer. Kola always walked ahead, turning back to hold Amina's hand whenever the road grew slippery. And Amina believed that as long as Kola was beside her, no matter how poor life became, it would never be frightening. They once sat beneath an old mango tree, watching the sun sink behind low rooftops, and made promises that were simple but true. "Someday, whether rich or poor, I will marry you. As long as it's you, I'm not afraid." That promise followed them through the years as they grew older. When Kola decided to leave the village for the city to build a future, Amina saw him off with tear-filled eyes and a hopeful heart. She believed he would return, not with wealth, but as a man confident enough to stand before her mother. But life does not follow youthful promises. Kola's family collapsed after a failed business season. Their ancestral lands were sold to pay off debts. His father, the former pillar of the entire family, fell ill and died, his final days filled with humiliation for being unable to preserve the family's honor. Overnight, the name Kola went from hope to burden. His family's honor crumbled. Those who once greeted him warmly turned away. Doors closed as he passed by. Kola returned to the village wearing worn clothes, with empty hands and a heart weighed down by shame. Still, he went to Amina's house to ask for her hand in marriage. He stood in the courtyard, carrying modest gifts, not because he was stingy, but because they were all he had. In his eyes remained love, the promise from years ago, and the belief that Amina would choose him. But the person he faced was not Amina, it was her mother. She looked at the meager gifts, then scanned Kola from head to toe. There was no hesitation in her eyes. She threw the gifts to the ground. The dull thud echoed like a final verdict, crushing every last trace of hope. Her voice was cold, without a hint of mercy. "My daughter will not marry a man with empty hands." Amina stood inside the house, each word cutting into her heart like a blade. She wanted to run out. She wanted to say she was still waiting, still believing. But her feet would not move. Tradition, family, and the fear of poverty held her in place. Kola bent down and picked up the gifts. He did not beg. He did not cry. He understood that in that moment, their love had been placed on a scale, and he had lost. That day, Kola left carrying nothing with him but humiliation. Many years later, in the middle of a lavish wedding, where crystal chandeliers reflected off expensive suits and flowing silk gowns, a man quietly walked into the hall. There was no fanfare, no announcement. No one turned around to look at him for more than a second. The suit he wore was so simple it seemed out of place among all the display around him. No logos, no flashy accessories. Just a man standing straight, his gaze calm, his face unreadable. He did not smile. He did not scan the room with curiosity like the other guests. To everyone else, he was just another anonymous attendee. Except Amina. As the bride stood at the altar, her hands trembling slightly beneath the weight of her wedding gown, her eyes drifted across the crowd, and then they stopped. Her heart tightened, as if someone had crushed it in their fist. That man, in that single moment of eye contact, Amina nearly collapsed. Her breath caught, her mind went blank. Every sound around her faded away. Before her eyes, there was no wedding. No groom standing beside her. Only the past rushing back like a flood. Kola. No introduction was needed. No confirmation required. She recognized him instantly, even though time had changed everything. Those eyes, the same eyes that once looked at her beneath the mango tree years ago, were unchanged, quiet, deep, and filled with things left unsaid. But the Kola standing there today was no longer the poor young man who had once been despised. After leaving the village, he vanished from Amina's life like a shadow. No letters, no messages, only years of silence. And in that silence, Kola lived like a man who was not allowed to fail. He studied in silence, working by day, learning by night, never granting himself the right to complain. He entered the business world with empty hands and a name that had once been looked down upon. Every contract, every step forward, was paid for with sweat, humiliation, and the memory of the day his marriage gifts were thrown back at him. Kola rebuilt his family's legacy from ashes. What his father had lost, he reclaimed piece by piece, not through luck, but through cold determination and iron discipline. When the name Kola began appearing in the media, people called him the young chairman, a rising phenomenon in Nigeria's business world. He had succeeded. He had reached a place no one once believed he ever could. Yet amid the luxury parties, the applause, and the stage lights, Kola never allowed himself to forget one thing. Deep in his heart, he still carried the promise made long ago, a promise spoken when they were both so poor they had to share a single piece of dry bread. He looked at Amina from a distance. He did not step forward. He did not call her name. He simply stood there in silence, as if the entire world had narrowed down to two people who once loved each other, but were torn apart by fate. He had succeeded, but he had never forgotten his promise to Amina. When Kola stepped onto the altar, the entire hall erupted into chaos. Whispers surged like a breaking wave. An unfamiliar man, not listed in the ceremony, not announced by name, walked straight onto the stage where the bride and groom stood. The wedding music wavered, then stopped completely. The air froze for several heartbeats. Amina's mother was the first to react. She stormed forward like a raging tempest, her dress disheveled, her face flushed with fury. Her trembling finger pointed straight at Kola as her voice screamed across the hall. "How dare you show your face here?" Before anyone could stop her, her hand swung. Smack! The slap cracked through the room, dry, brutal, tearing through the glittering facade of the lavish ceremony. Hundreds of eyes widened. Some mouths fell open. A few guests covered their lips, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Kola's head tilted slightly with the impact. He did not step back. He did not raise a hand to shield his face. He did not react immediately. Instead, he turned and looked at Amina. She stood there in her pure white wedding gown, but her face was pale. Her lips trembled. Her eyes brimmed with tears, empty, as if she had cried so much that none were left. In her gaze, Kola saw everything: fear, submission, and the final despair of a woman about to be buried alive in a loveless marriage. In that moment, the world shrank until only the two of them remained. Kola took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. His shoulders trembled slightly, as if bracing himself for a decision he knew there would be no return from. His voice rose low and hoarse, only loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I'm sorry." No one knew who he was apologizing to: for arriving too late, for coming back at all, or for what he was about to do. Then smack! Kola's hand struck back, slapping the woman standing before him. The entire hall fell into deathly silence. Not because of the force of the slap, but because of what it meant. There was no hatred in Kola's eyes, no satisfaction. Only pain, and the resolve of a man who had stayed silent for far too long. He stared directly at Amina's mother, his voice trembling, each word falling like a heavy stone. "If I stay silent today, your daughter will be dead for the rest of her life." A wave of shock rippled through the hall. The groom stood frozen, his face drained of color. Guests who had been raising their glasses in celebration just moments earlier now lowered their heads, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. The glamour suddenly felt grotesque, painfully absurd. Just then, from the back row, an elderly man spoke, his voice shaking, almost a whisper, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "My God, that's Chairman Kola Adewale." The name struck like a bolt of lightning. Doubt turned instantly into horror. Faces that once mocked him, once looked down on him, now went pale with shame. The man they had just seen slapped in public was the very young chairman they had praised in the newspapers, the man they had dreamed of shaking hands with. Amina's mother staggered back a step. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The arrogance drained from her face, collapsing in front of every guest she had hoped to impress. In that moment, there was no wedding, no false honor, only naked truth, and shame spreading through the hall like a crack that could no longer be hidden. The entire hall collapsed under the weight of disgrace. The wedding fell apart. Not with loud cries or curses, but with a suffocating silence. One by one, the guests stood up. They set their glasses down, avoided each other's eyes, and quietly walked away, as if they had never witnessed anything at all. Elegant gowns and expensive suits passed through the now empty hall, leaving behind a stage where honor had shattered. The wealthy groom was left standing alone. The smile that once commanded respect had vanished. His eyes searched the room for approval, but all he received were turned backs. Money no longer protected him. Power no longer mattered. In that moment, he understood there are things no amount of wealth can buy, and Amina's mother. She stood in the middle of the empty hall, a place that had been filled with congratulations only minutes earlier. White bouquets drooped. Petals scattered at her feet like unanswered questions. Her trembling hand reached out to touch an empty chair, as if her daughter had been standing there just moments ago. For the first time, there was no hardness in her eyes. only belated confusion. She realized that money could not purchase happiness, and that forcing a choice in the name of securing the future had cost her the most precious thing of all. No one said a word, yet the truth was painfully clear. She had lost her daughter, not to poverty, but to her own wrong decision. Outside, the grand doors closed behind Kola and Amina. Kola held Amina's hand tightly. Her hand was icy, trembling, like someone waking from a long nightmare. He said nothing. There was no need. That single grip was the answer to all the years of distance, misunderstanding, and pain. There was no wedding music to see them off. No fireworks lighting up the sky. Only the soft sound of wind moving across the steps, carrying silent tears as they fell. Amina cried, no longer holding back. She cried for what she had lost, for the endless nights of despair, and for the fear she had swallowed for so many years. Kola stopped and turned to look at her. There was no triumph in his eyes, only the quiet peace of a man who had finally protected the one thing he treasured most. He tightened his grip on her hand once more, a vow spoken without words. They walked on, leaving behind what had once been a wedding hall, leaving behind judgmental eyes, and the mistakes of the past. The road ahead promised no ease, but it was the path they had chosen, with love and with courage. All that remained were tears, and a promise finally kept after years of pain. There are actions that can never be forgiven, but there are also actions born to save a life.